Hey guys, it's Isaiah Thompson here with DailyClout's This Week in Congress, where I'm going to go over everything that's going on the Hill for you in detail. We're going to take a good look at what the Senate and what the House is doing, and I'm going to really try and keep it to Congress and the bills and laws that are passed, because I think often in the media we only get to see, what Trump's doing lately. I promise here not to cover Trump tweets if you promise not to comment about them. Fair? Let's get started. So, this week the House is taking on the opioid epidemic, and they really took on a slate of 39 bills, all dealing with different aspects of the opioid crisis. So, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. The American opioid crisis is a 50-state epidemic, really, and it stems from these pill mills. These are places where pain medication are being pretty much given out like candy, and there's been some legislation and judicial proceedings to try and go after some of the people who are responsible for this, but nevertheless, it's still a huge crisis. We're talking about addicts having progressed from prescription drugs to eventually go into harder narcotics like heroin and fentanyl. And this is leading to never before seen overdose numbers. I have a few numbers here. For the year 2015, more than 33,000 people died from heroin overdoses. So to put that in the context, that's about the same amount of deaths from cars that year, and it's getting pretty close to eclipsing the number of gun homicide rates. So that's a lot. So this is real, no matter what we think and say, politically, this kind of is an issue that I think we all need to see that it's really affecting our country in a negative way, and something has to be done. So let's really see what Congress essentially is trying to do to stop this and what they're going to do about it. So let's take a look at the legislation they voted on this week. First up is Bill H.R. 5788. This is the Securing the International Mail Against Opioids Act. It would set up opioid detection systems at international post offices. This bill requires the U.S. Post Office, USPS, to obtain advanced electronic data, also known as AED, on international mail shipments to Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, Customs, which would then target and inspect potential opioid shipments. The new screening system would be funded through a fee assessment on express international shipments. I want to explain what this AED, or Advanced Electronic Data, is. If you think about it, essentially, the U.S. agencies depend on electronic data. This includes shipment name and address, the consignee name and address, the cargo conscription, the weight, the piece count, where it came from. All of this information helps the agencies that screen the packages coming from other countries to America to tell whether or not these are potential threats. So what happens is, if you have this information and this data, obviously we have to think about it this way. I think there are upwards of 340 million packages that come in internationally to America. There's no way to actually, pick through each one and tell, is this a opioid package, or is this just your grandma's bed sheets from the old country? We have to have a way to figure it out. So the advanced electronic data really helps us kind of quickly narrow down whether or not this is a package that could be a risk, and then at those international post offices, they do go in and try and figure out, well, what exactly is in here, and they check it out. So that's kind of how that works. Customs already requires this data for private carriers, so this new bill would add this level of protection to the public, the USPS. So, moving on, another interesting bill is the Thrive Act, or H.R. 5735. This bill will create a 5-year pilot program. It's aimed at expanding housing options for individuals who are transitioning out of addiction treatment for opioid use or substance abuse disorders and require additional support. So the program would be administered by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and would set aside Section 8 housing choice vouchers for supportive transitional housing to go to nonprofits who provide this to provide life skills trainings and housings and services to continue to keep people away from what they're addicted to. So the number of vouchers will be 10,000, or 0.05% of all the HUD Section 8 housing vouchers. So the eligible recipients will receive 12 to 24 months of assistance, after which the provider would be able to transfer the voucher assistance to a newly selected eligible recipient. Sponsor of the bill, Andy Bark, had this to say: "It's critical that Congress do more to combat the opioid epidemic. Essentially, in my home state, Kentucky, we have a third of the highest opioid overdose mortality rate in the nation. Transitional housing is a proven evidence-based approach that has helped thousands of Americans maintain sobriety after completing rehab, gain valuable skills and job training, obtain employment, and eventually transition back into society to lead independent lives. The bill requires that nonprofits chosen to be eligible entities provide services for transitional housing programs that provide treatment to opioid use disorders or other substance disorders as applicable. It also requires job training, as I said, and it's for kind of a shortest amount of time, period of 12 to 24 months. It's not long, but it's something, especially when it comes to people who are dealing with addiction. So this bill is kind of creating this pilot program to provide this transitional housing at a time when a lot of qualifying families across the nation are on like year-long and more waiting lists for HUD, for Section 8 housing, which is interesting. And if you've watched John Oliver's recent Last Week Tonight coverage of rehab centers, you would know why some are really weary of the idea of giving them, these nonprofits, this leeway instead of just allowing the government to run these programs. But I'm interested in seeing what you guys think about it. So these are just two of the dozens of bills that were voted on this week, and I want you guys to tell me what you think in the comments. If you want further analysis and conversation, you should head to DailyClout.io. And of course, I'm Isaiah Thompson, and this is This Week in Congress. I love talking to you guys, and of course, I'll see you next week. Please go to DailyClout.io, become a member, and let's talk about this so we can help save democracy.